Hi, in today's video we are going to be taking a look at a very interesting Najdorf variation in the white's repertoire. Najdorf variation is one of the most sharpest lines for black in the Sicilian. Basically, the Sicilian is a very dynamic opening, and Najdorf is also very dynamic variation. Of course, exist another Sicilian lines which are more quiet and more solid, which means there's not so much dynamic at the position, and black is literally going to play a bit more safety. Here in this line, white is actually playing 6 rook g1, and let's take a look at this line and what are the very interesting possibilities. So this is going to be first part, and we start with e4, black goes c5, white plays knight f3, d6, and we got d4. This is the first critical moment in the Sicilian, because usually when this happens, black has to react with taking on d4, otherwise white can play c3 or simply something like d5 and control the center very nicely. Very important thing is that here white is going to take the space in case that black doesn't capture on d4. So we got c takes d4, knight takes d4. So basically there's also queen d4 here, but this is not very great move in the Sicilian overall practically, because there's simply knight c6 where black is threatening to take the queen, and if white moves the queen, like white already moved the queen too early in the opening, which is not really the great thing overall. So we got knight d4, black does knight f6, and now white plays knight c3 to typically defend the pawn on e4, and here black does a6. This is the Najdorf line. The ideas behind these moves are very typical. So black is actually looking forward to play b5, black is looking forward to stop knight b5, and also black will play e5 eventually. Also black has some other moves which are going to be played over here. Usually white wants to develop his pieces in these types of positions, or either start pushing some pawns with an idea of slowly restricting some squares, which can be later very important. In this line, in this interesting line, white is actually playing very cool move rook g1. The idea behind this move is very simple. White is sacrificing the kingside castling options in order to start with rook g1. He's looking forward to play g4, g5. The idea is very simple. White would like to create a pressure around the kingside, which is going to lead to very deep issues in the black's position. And if black is not actually used to this, black can actually run into so many big issues in the position. And it's so easy for white to take the advantage here, because somehow everything is coming with the tempo, everything is coming with the dynamic initiative, and for black it's not so easy to find the initiative at all. When we take a look at this move, it might seem a little bit suspicious because the rook moves to g1, but actually there's nothing wrong with this idea, because white is usually looking to long castle and protect the king on the other side of the board. So here what happens next is a move. There are a few moves which can happen from the black side. So there are the moves like b5, there's e5. We're also going to be taking a look at knight c6 today, and also e6 today. So those 4 lines are very typical approaches when it comes to the Najdorf variation. So the first move is going to be b5. This is very logical move. The idea behind move is very simply typical. Black is looking forward to play around the queen side like in most of the Sicilian variations. And now black is preparing b4, where white has to worry about the tempo of the knight and the knight being attacked. So this can seem a bit dangerous, and most of the players might be thinking about going a3, but this is actually not the case. What white should be playing is actually straightforwardly g4 with an idea of g5 instantly. Now the question is what happens after black does b4, which is very simple idea, where black will distract the knight from c3, and the e4 pawn will become a target. Very typical, knight d5 is coming up here, and the best move for black is to probably take, but also some players would go for knight e4, picking up the pawn and being like, okay, let's take a centralized pawn. The pawn on b4 is like hanging, but if white takes the pawn on b4, that's going to be the pawn on the queen side, while white gave the pawn in the center. So black should be okay, because he's going to control the center most likely in the future. This is actually not correct, and the main reason why this is not correct is because, very simply, when it comes at this position, white has a move bishop g2. This move bishop g2 is actually pinning the knight towards the rook, and it's putting black under so many serious problems. The first problem over here is a tempo move. So black has to retreat back, and he is losing a tempo. So now the possible moves for black are knight c5 and, for example, something like knight f6. But the move knight f6 already in this case is a big blunder, because it simply gives white the tempo to give a check, and now he can take a free rook. So this move, knight f6, is eliminated at the start. If we go back, here there's a move knight c5. After bishop g2, there's a move knight c5. And now it looks like black is kind of solving the problems. But now white is playing very simple. White just captures the pawn on b4, and those knights are looking to strike together, and black is under a question. What's he gonna do? The best move he can do is bishop b7, but after bishop b7, knight b7 and queen f3, white is actually running so big attack around the black's queen side. I mean, the pressure is definitely not under question, and black is not having an easy answer. Only answer here, which is not going to lead to some source of the material loss, is a queen b6, but that move actually runs into knight d5, which is very cool move. And here white is preparing bishop e3 in case of queen d4. After bishop e3, queen c4, white will just play knight b6, and he is just going to simply make a fork and cause serious issues into black's position. So this idea of doing queen b6 actually doesn't work at all, and if black tries something like rook a7, white is just going to run a fork, and that's going to be GG at this point. So this line also doesn't work for black. If we go back, instead of bishop b7, black can instantly play rook a7, but he is again running into knight from b to c6. He's running into threat, and at this point again black can simply resign. So this is the main reason why knight e4 is not the move. The best move, as I said, is most likely to take, the best practical decision, and let's see what is going on over here. White takes on d5. The little bit easier thing for black over here is that after knight e5, black basically went through situation to trade off the piece, and that's kind of helpful if we talk about the pressure. But what is going on over here is that white got the open file, and black has a problems to move the e6 pawn, and the king is very vulnerable. For example, if black does something like e6, white can just capture and do something like queen e6, target e6 and d6 in the future, play bishop g2 with the tempo, and what seems to me is that white is running very easy development with no problems around the pawn structure, and black is having serious issues about creating any source of the problems for white, particularly no threats. Like, I don't see really any threats from the black side which he can make towards the white's position and cause problems. That's simply very difficult here, and this is one of the main reasons why I really like this line. So looking back at this position, instead of playing b4, black can play move bishop b2, but now there's bishop g2 defending the pawn on e4, and now it's very typical to play e6, where white will just keep going on. After g5, he'll play after knight e7 f4, and white is having very simple strategy: push all the way up to h4, h5, g6, try to damage the black's king side, and this feels very uncomfortable for black. So the move b5 seems one of the best, but again, black has to know that here b5 is the move. The next move here is going to be the very typical move e5. And this is very popular beside this rook g1 line from white side. If white does another lines, e5 move is very typical in Najdorf. One of the things which might be uncomfortable here is that white is actually looking forward to take the square around d5 always when there's e5 at the board, but that's the price which the players who are playing Najdorf, like also me, I also play Najdorf, who are going to pay a little bit. They need to take that risk in order to get the space and try to get their pieces as much as they can to be activated. Here, now I will show you guys how black can actually equalize the position and what is the another way, because absolutely any other lines are actually leading to some sort of the white's initiative and very difficult play for black. So here knight b3, not knight f3 like in the another lines, because now doesn't exist g4, g5, and rook g1 lost a sense. So now knight b3, bishop e6, and the best idea is to actually quickly play d5. In this case, black has a real chance to equalize, and white is not really having an easy gameplay. So after playing g4, d5, pawn takes, knight takes, knight takes, and after, let's say, queen takes, white just gonna take, play bishop e3, get long castling, and simply the situation is looking very, very difficult. I mean, it's not looking difficult, but it's not easy for white to create any advantages, because after knight c6, long castling, it seems like black activated most of his pieces. The pawn structure is very stable, and most importantly, the king is very safe. And one more thing, it doesn't seem very easy for white to strike through the black's position, and yeah, white is just completely putting the pressure, black is just struggling to find the answers. So over here, if we take a look at these situations, going back towards the e5, knight b3, black's players are also looking forward to play b5, but again, there's g4, and white is just standing very good, because after queen f3, not bishop g2, now white is kind of prepared to again play g5, h4, put the pressure on the black's position, run so much pressure, and black is literally having serious problems to find a plan. Very typical things over here which are black's players using, Najdorf players using, is h6 to stop g5, but now we can simply play h4, and now let's say something like g6, there's just going to be g5, takes, and after knight h5, white is going to be running bishop e3 with a long castling and knight e5 next. And what simply seems to me is black is no longer having an easy plan. His knight is on the edge of the board. His pieces didn't finish the development. d6 become very, very deep problem and weaknesses. And after finding long castling, it seems like white is actually running a great position. So this is usually what happens if black does play e5, and how white can take the advantage. Now let's take a look at another line, very simple, e6. So this is very common for the Najdorf players. They like to play the move e6 because the move e6 is very typical in the another lines. The idea is simply to stop knight d5 options, and there's no outpost for white. So in this case, it seems like white is not having an easy gameplay. However, this is the mistake, because white already ran into rook g1. White is now having very quickly g4, g5. This is very serious. Let's say b5, after g5, knight d7, simply a3 to stop now b4, because now there's no knight d5. So now it doesn't really make sense to allow b4 anymore. And after bishop b7, there's just f4. White is just having great position. Let's say knight b6, bishop e3, knight d7. White will just play queen d2, and again with simply long castling. And the next white's ideas are h4, h5, or simply f5. And at all, it's very hard for black to find the proper answers. So this is the line with e6. The last line, we are going to be taking a look at the first part today. is the move knight c6. And the reason why I left this line as a last line is because it has a very nice ideas. There's a very nice trap which can white set up. So now g4, and now the first intention in this case would be, well, can't white just lose the pawn here? Like black is just going to capture on d4, there's going to be queen d4, and now black is just going to capture on g4. So let's see what is going to happen. So now obviously black has to take on d4 first, because if black, let's say, tries bishop g4, there's a very nice knight c6 between move here, attacking the queen, and if black takes the queen, black is simply losing the piece because there's knight d8. If black goes b takes c6, white is simply getting two pieces for the rook, and obviously white is winning this position because black has no compensation. I mean, black took the pawn, but black doesn't have activity, he didn't develop, and it seems like over here black is having very serious struggle. So here, if we go back, the best practical chance in this case for black to try to get some pawn is playing knight d4, queen d4 obviously, and here knight g4. This is a very typical answer. Now white should play a very nice knight d5. The idea is very simple. White will take d5 pretty early, and then after that white will play the move knight b6. This is going to cause very serious problems into the black's position, and he's not going to have an easy development. Also, that pawn who is sacrificed on g4, he's benefiting white because of the g file, and white will be available to pick up the g file. So this is very serious problems for black in this case. Let's say knight f6, knight b6, rook b8, and now white can play e5. Taking on e5 leads to queen e5. Well, there black is literally having serious problems with the rook, and now if he develops with the bishop, white will just play bishop f4, and simply he's gonna pick up this rook. No matter that the knight on b6 is hanging, the rook on b8 is hanging, and white is simply winning the game. So that knight g4 line is generally possible, but again, black is going to suffer. Very cool line is bishop g4, because this is a trap. So the question is, what is the best move for white over here? It seems like black got the tempo, he developed the piece, he also took the pawn. However, over here white has a secret weapon. Not rook g3, sorry, but rook g4. After playing rook g4, knight g4, there's queen f4. After going queen f4, white is just winning. The reason why is because black can play the move b5, and after playing b5, white is just going to take with the knight. Very nice idea. Now black's king is struggling to find the escape, and white is just completely winning. If black goes queen d7, that's also leading to complete disaster, because there's very nice pin bishop b5. Black has to take with the pawn. We got queen a8. Black has to do queen d8, and after queen b7, simply white is running to so nice ideas, queenside pressure, and black is having a problem with his king. So guys, thank you for watching this video, and I hope that you like this Najdorf variation. Please leave a comment if you think there could be something a little better in the video when it comes to analysis and explanations, and I'm happy to hear you. I'm happy to hear if you would like to see Najdorf variations part 2. Thank you for support, and see you in the next video.